Hello there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. And a great show for you today with Pete Thompson. Before we get to it, I just hope you're enjoying this track, our new music. You probably noticed that. Our intro and outro music has been written and performed by Thad Spencer, so it's all ours. He did the last one as well, but I was really ready for a change, so hope you're digging it. Thad has been on the show. He's an awesome musician and kindly offered to write us a new track, so hope you're enjoying it. Pete Thompson, Little Pete, out in Colorado, made some pretty big waves this year. You've probably seen the news recently, but he sent some big FAI triangles. This is something he's been working on a long time. He and I have very similar backgrounds in flying, a lot of vol-biv and a lot of racing. I've been racing with Little Pete since my beginning and his beginning. We've both been at it a little over 20 years now. But he's been out in Colorado, which has over 50 14ers, and he did a vol-biv a few years back across the whole state, which was really cool. There's a great movie of that. I'll have the link up on that in the blog post about this show. But I reached out to Pete this time because of his summer. He's been planning and working on these big FAI triangles and trying to crack the 300 here in the U.S., which is not nearly as straightforward as it is over in Europe, partially because how our terrain is lined up, but also because you're typically doing it on your own, or maybe if you're lucky with one other person. So it's not like rocking up to Col d'Angel in France and having 50 people on launch, or Fiche, or Andermatt, or any of the number of places where they do big triangles over in Europe, and not Andermatt. What am I trying to say? Antholz. But yeah, Pete this summer in August, which is a couple months after the solstice and the days are not as long, cracked the FAI record with the 275 that just beat out Galen's, who did that here in Sun Valley last summer. So that put it all on the map, and we were all really watching. And then very shortly after, he did a 292, and then very shortly after that did a 305. And, he's flying with two big O2 tanks and often up at 18 grand. So we've got things that are more difficult about doing big triangles here, namely the deepness and the remoteness and lack of roads and a lot of terrain and stuff, a lot of treed terrain, especially there in Colorado. But we do climb really fast, and we can glide a long ways before we need another climb. So we've known that this could happen here, and a lot of us have been trying to have a big crack at it, and Pete finally did it. So I wanted to reach out to him and find out where the motivation came from, and the lines, and what were the tricky parts, and what's it like flying with all that O2, and how does he deal with cold and everything else, and the equipment and all of it. So great discussion with a great dude, and you've seen the news about this, but this is kind of the deep dive. So enjoy this chat with Pete Thompson. Cheers. Pete, awesome to have you on the show. We should have done this live when you were out at the wide open when we were doing acro yoga and getting freaky, but you had to peace out and go hunt some elk. So, but good to see you, man.
Thanks, Gavin. Thanks for having me. I've been watching your podcast for a long time, and thought maybe one day I'd do something worthy of chatting about on here. So it's good to be here.
Well, damn, dude, you certainly have. Let's talk about some of that. So I just found out before we started recording, you've been flying out in Colorado for 16 years. Is that right? You had about 5 years under your belt, and you went out to do tandems. Take us back a ways.
Sure. I have been flying in Colorado for 16 years and about 21 years total. I learned right when I got out of high school. My buddy in Pennsylvania, my buddy AJ Fry, introduced me to the sport. And we did some renegade flights there, took a couple lessons, went to college in Bozeman, Montana, met Andy out there who was really supportive with Bozeman paragliding, and spent about 5 years in college and spent most of those summers in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And those are big formative years for me as a pilot, because Jackson still has a good crew of pilots, but back then, man, it was one of the epicenters of the country where you had,
Hunt and Grease and
oh gosh, 10,
JP and
15 guys on takeoff on a good day, all trying to fly 100 miles with oxygen. And 100 miles was a big flight back then. And then right after college, I came here to Carbondale, Glenwood Springs, and started working as a tandem pilot.
And that's in Aspen, or you do tandems in Glenwood Springs?
I did tandems in Glenwood, and it's like 45 minutes down the road from Aspen.
Okay. And then you and I have been flying comps together for longer than I can remember, but, you started going to Monarca about the same time, right? Kind of 2010, 2011, is that right?
Yeah,
Is that too early?
No, that's probably accurate. Yeah. When I worked as a tandem pilot, I couldn't fly any of the comps in the U.S., so I was missing out on that scene for about a decade. But I would always go to Monarca and fly there, and that was kind of like a one comp a year kind of a guy. And then I stopped doing tandems 5 years ago, and that's freed up my schedule, and now I get to fly about 4 comps a year.
Okay. It would be remiss if we're talking about these big FAIs you threw down this summer just over and over and over again. I got a funny story about that, actually. Being over, where were we? We were in Turkey at the World Cup, Bill and I said, hey, did you see Pete's flight? And he goes, yeah, of course I saw Pete's flight. I go, no, dude, yesterday's big flight. He did it again. We just like, what? Oh my God. But, so we'll get to that, but it would be remiss of me to jump over your bivvy. You made this really cool film, a mutual friend of ours, Michael Bahar, who did a bunch of writing for me back in the days with the boat trip. I know he covered, he did some writing about your bivvy across Colorado, but let's spend a few times there. What was the mission? What did you do? Where can people find out more about it?
Sure. So it was a number of years ago now that project went down, but it was finally in 2020, I did a cross Colorado bivvy flight trip, and it took about 8 days. It was 4 days of flying and then 4 days of walking in a row, starting down south in Mancos, Colorado, so really close to the New Mexico border, and then I finished by going up through the Wyoming border to the north of Rocky Mountain Park. And I've been trying that project for 3 years and gave a good swing at it every year, but just never really had the weather. I mean, the weather in Colorado is really challenging. And that's right, I forgot you connected me with Michael. He did that article for the first year. I was out there for like 9 days, just like getting stormed on mountaintops, and took a lot of footage of that. And then finally the third year I was successful, and that has been commemorated in a film that my friend Dylan Brown has made. And the film is Wingman, and it's on your normal streaming services. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's about an hour long. It's a lot of me, but it was cool. It was quite the adventure. It was cool to kind of cap off that series of seasons of trying that experience. A lot like how this year was the accumulation of a lot of effort over a couple of seasons to try and do some really, really big triangles.
And were those the big triangles that you did this year? Was that on your radar even back then, or did this kind of grow out of in some ways that trip? And as you were marching across Colorado by air and by foot, were you kind of piecing this together, or had you already?
I didn't have the full vision for the big triangles back then. At that time I had the Colorado Triangle record. It was like 170K. But I was still doing tandems back then, and so my schedule was always a bit restricted, mainly that I would fly tandems in the morning, and then we had this great site by Glenwood where we could go launch at noon. It worked perfect with our schedule, and you could still go crank out 100 or 150 mile flight. And it wasn't until I stopped doing tandems and I started flying in the mornings in Aspen and catching those really early morning thermals, I started realizing, like, oh gosh, like you could fly for 10 or 11 hours in this state on a good day. So it was 4 seasons ago. I started trying to do some big triangles in Colorado. And I've always loved to do triangle flights, whether we're in Valle or Colombia or Brazil. And, just the concept is
getting home's cool.
Getting home is so cool. And the added challenge of piecing together the different legs of it. And then here in Colorado, though, it's hard to find the light wind days. It's almost harder to find a good open distance day because if you're going to fly 300 Ks here, you end up running into overdevelopment somewhere. Like to get a day where, it's not just nice here, but it's nice in New Mexico seems to be impossible or more rare.
Right. Try to explain to those listening who haven't flown Colorado, which incredibly is me as well. I've done one speed flight in Colorado. Can you imagine? It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But how does it differ from the Alps? How does these triangles that you did, and they weren't all the same, but when you look at X contest and you switch over to satellite view, it looks pretty tiger. Not all of it, but it looks pretty tiger, and it looks in some places incredibly committing. What are you dealing with there? What are the heights of the mountains? What are the heights of the valleys? What are the road systems? Try to explain it for those who haven't been there.
Yeah, I think that Colorado is an amazing venue for big flights, but there are some inherent challenges as well. So the state is covered in, the center of the state's covered in really big mountains with fairly narrow valleys. It's fairly dry, and there aren't a ton of roads. We're not generally dealing with areas where you're going to have a 3-day walkout. I think some people think that, but it's just not really what you run into around here. But you're going over a lot of terrain where you're still pretty far from a road, say 10 miles or 15 Ks from little quiet dirt roads. So there's a lot of boonies out there. There's, you might see a dirt road down below, but you could watch it for 2 hours and not see a car go by. And it's committing. There's the valleys are generally open enough where you can land in them. It's not like the Pacific Northwest where you're going to get choked in some valley and there's not even going to be a trail. So there's a lot of wilderness. The bigger of those two triangles, or the two larger ones, crossed over a big section of desert as well, and low terrain by the Colorado River, and there's high plateaus, jagged mountains. It's really got it all.
Mm. Yeah. And there's how many 14ers in Colorado?
54.
54.
Yeah.
Okay. How many of them are you ticking off on these big flights?
On the smaller of those 3 flights is the most mountainous line, and you're in the good proximity of probably 8 or 9 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool.
It's cool, but you've definitely got to be pretty strong-willed or you just have to have a really good ability just not to think about the fact that there aren't a lot of people down below you or a lot of roads and a lot of rough terrain.
Just keep believing and making the moves that make sense.
Yeah, but that's what we deal with here.
Just trust in your skills.
Yeah. Trust in the day, trust in the skills. I only go for big flights on really good days. And the deal is around here, if you wanted to follow the roads and you had that as a condition with what you're going to try and do in your flight, you'd never get anywhere. So it just comes with the territory, like where you live.
Yeah. It's just interesting because I need to get there to see it. But, for when I first moved here, what we always just talked about is, it's so deep. And it's really not. It's exactly like you say. There are places to land, and there are places that, there's going to be hunters or people out there recreating. Someone's going to come along. Knock on wood, I've yet to have to spend the night. Usually you're going to get out. But it sure looks remote.
Yeah.
It sure feels remote when you're doing it.
Yeah, it is.
And some of the stuff we do out in Nevada that's more, to me, life threatening because there's no water and it's hot and you really do need, and there's not much shade. You need to get to somewhere. But
yeah,
what are your biggest What's the biggest oh shit factor? Is it trying to stay below 18? Is it, what are the things that you're battling the most? Is it the cold? Is it the altitude? What is it?
Yeah, getting too high or too low, I guess.
Yeah.
Avoiding breaking the 18,000 foot airspace is a challenge, and you have to be really
that
on it.
Sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is the one. I mean, when I look at your big days, they're the same as out here. We often have these 21, 22, 23,000 foot days, and that's actually more of a pucker factor for me than the other things. I hate fighting to stay down. That is hard. It's hard. I mean, it's just hard. It's hard on your head. It's hard to do when you're cold. It's the last thing you want to do when you're crushing out distance.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, I'd say that, that's a major challenge. And then it's managing that with being over the deep terrain. So you do want to be as high as possible. You don't want to spend too much time having to go around clouds and obstacles like that. And then, when you're trying to go to these maximum distances and have the highest average speed for the day, you're also kind of having to race. So you're not going slow. You're having to go as fast as possible. So, having that perfect recipe in every moment of those different factors.
Take us through quickly the 6 flights. What was the first one, and then just take us down through it, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper. But what were they?
Sure. Well, I had one early season flight where I connected a new line out to what we call the Grand Mesa. The Mesa connects the Colorado River Valley and the Gunnison River Valley, and in June, I had a flight where I stretched out to that mesa, and I'd never made that connection before. I never thought that it would work that early in the morning, connecting the crux crossing to get to it. And I finally did that, and I landed at like 100. I bombed out this day, but it was a huge day. I bombed out at 100 Ks at 1 p.m. after 4 hours. And that kind of lit a little bit of a light in my head where I realized, oh man, maybe I could do a huge line out there. But I had another line I'd been chasing for the last 3 seasons, and it's just pure mountain flying. It goes to the south first and then northwest and comes back to Aspen. And I'd done 270 on that line last year. And that was the first really big triangle of the year. And that was in early August. I managed to stretch the last turn point of that flight and get, I think, 275 kilometers and get the North American record, which I'd come really close to besting Galen's incredible flight last year. And that was just like an incredible achievement. Like I'd been trying it for 4 seasons, and I finally got the full expression of that liner. And
so that was the line. I mean, this line was the one you'd planned, you'd looked at, you had it sussed out, and it finally went.
Yeah, it finally went like bigger, where I got into the big mountains at the end of the day and was able to extend it a little bit further. But then on that day, I'm extending the last point, and I'm looking at going further, and I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm thinking, man, I could get 300 today. I could do it. And I hedged my bet in the safer direction and turned back and just got 275 and closed it. And I was really thrilled with that. But that left this hanger of, I probably could have gotten it that day, like 300, the benchmark, because that was really the biggest goal, was to get 300.
Totally. Of course.
So 8 days later, the forecast was on again, and I went out and I tried this new Grand Mesa line that I'd just done the first leg of previously. Only one time had this line like really been even tried. And I ended up going 292. I didn't quite close it, and I could have. Like, the end of the day was slow, and I came like, I don't know, 6K short of coming all the way back to the landing field. And I just needed to extend it a little bit. And I like had it there in my fingertips, and it was a 9.5 hour flight, but it was a new record. So it was this kind of bittersweet thing. I'd come, so close to 300, but I got a new record and
You
did
left
it.
a little on the table.
Yeah, but I did it with a good, like I got the record by a good margin. So I was just thrilled. I mean, that's when people were like, what the heck is going on in Colorado? Like it's happened again. That was like the first he did it again. And then the next, after that flight, I told myself and I told my partner, Caitlin, I said, I'm pretty much done with the big flights for the season. And
because you were physically smoked.
I was just pretty smoked afterwards. Yeah. Less smoke than the first big one, but I felt like I was in better shape after that flight. And then I was at home the next day and I'm looking at the forecast for the following day. And I was like, man, there's so much less headwind for the first leg and the lifted index looked a little bit better. And so that Wednesday, 2 days after I'd done the previous flight, I showed up back on takeoff and everyone was pretty surprised to see me. They said, what are you doing here? I thought you were done. And I just, I had a dream. I had what I wanted to accomplish and I went out and did it. The things just went a little bit more smoothly and I was able to extend the last leg. And it was a little bit different of a flight with just some added challenges in one area, but some ease in another. The end of the day was really fast on that flight.
Was that the one I was going to say? Was that the one that started really slow and you were thinking, this isn't working?
Yeah. There was some slow parts in the first leg, but on the last leg, I had an hour where I had a 55 kilometer an hour average speed. I finally caught a tailwind and I was throwing my anti-G out to just glide under clouds and getting sucked up. The clouds weren't even that big, but they were just pumping. And it was able to get the flight at the end of the day.
Wow. And that was what?
I think 3:05.
Okay.
I think 3:05.
And then there was another one.
Then about 2 weeks later, we did Jared Scheid. It came out and we got to do a really cool flight together where we did a similar line. We went a little further on one leg, a little shorter on another, but we went like 260 and didn't quite close it. But, by that point, it's like 260 was a small flight, it seemed. It's crazy.
It's just nothing.
I know.
It's crazy. Scary moments? Or was it all pretty straightforward?
There was, I'd say in each of those flights, there were some really kind of heads up moments. I like the triangles because you're not really flying in a ton of wind, but it seems like in Colorado, you always find some spot that's windy. And so I'd say on each of those flights, there was a moment where I had to tuck tail and go straight downwind off course line to either get out of a big lee side or just to go downwind to find that climb and go off course line, which is something I've gotten better at doing instead of just headstrong pushing until I'm on the dirt, realizing when you got to slow down and do what you got to do to get back up. And when getting back up's the most important thing. There's certain cruxes on the big triangle line, crossing a low zone at about 45 kilometers into the flight. It seems to always be tricky the 4 times I've done it, where you get kind of stuck there. And then the second leg has a really incredible but really challenging section where you're flying this big high plateau and you've been up there for 2 or 3 hours. And the plateau's at about 10,000 feet, 3,000 meters or a bit higher. And it has 5,000 feet of relief above the valleys on either side. And so, 1,500 meters. And finally, when you leave the plateau, you've kind of felt low all day because you've had all this high terrain and you glide out over the Colorado River Valley and you have all this height to deal with, which is absolutely incredible. But you're going over this really low valley and suddenly you're really worried about finding a climb and you have to start kind of scraping stuff together. And
is that kind of like going out into the swell? It's just you get a lot of sinky air for a while coming off the mesa.
Yeah, it can be like that, and it can be stable. And then when you do find there's climbs in there, and when you find them, they seem to be really rowdy. I lost on the first time doing that crossing. I lost the glider one time, which I haven't had a full blow up in years. And yeah, so there are moments. I mean, crossing the big plateau, there's another big plateau that you cross at the end of the day, and you're really deep. And it's the end of the day, you're like 6 p.m. and you still have 60 Ks to go. And you're over this just no man's land of a plateau and very few roads and a bunch of lakes up there. And it's like a 3-hour maybe drive from my house. So, you're just looking at spending the night if you mess up. And yeah.
Cool. What was the longest in terms of time?
The longest was 10 hours and 5 minutes. And each of those flights were 9:20, 9:50, 10:05, and 9:23. So
your average speed. Help me out with the math. What was your kind of average speed of if you put them all together?
The average speed is always right around 30 kilometers an hour. Yeah.
So not that fast. I mean, it's
pretty good for a triangle, but no. On each of those days, I feel like we could be going faster. Things could just go a little more smoothly. I mean, you have
just getting stuck in a couple places. And
headwinds. You could just have a day where
headwinds.
Yeah, having a day without any headwinds.
It's not slow, but it when you start thinking about, I mean, does this happen in July? Closer to the solstice when you've got more sun, or is that just usually too much too much monsoon?
Yeah, there's a lot of monsoon. There's a lot of monsoon in August as well. We just got really lucky this year. I mean, in general, Colorado is such a overdeveloped monsoonal place in the summer. But yeah, getting a flight in July is the dream. The first time I tapped into that Grand Mesa line was in July. It was July 6th. And I mean, that time of the year, you have an extra hour of daylight, probably stronger climbs. And
so maybe an 11-hour day. What time are you taking off in Aspen? It's a morning site, right?
Yeah, it's a morning site. You're taking off at 9-ish.
Okay, so wow, cool.
Yeah.
Pretty early.
Yeah.
Tell me about your gear. I mean, you do a ton of racing on the Enzo. I know you're flying the Xeno for this. I want to hear about your oxygen setup too, because you got a new, forever and ever you've been Little Pete. Now you're 2-tank Pete. I don't know if you knew that. But that picture of your 2 tanks is awesome. So tell us about those 2 things. What's the reasoning behind your gear? In this tank setup you've got?
Yeah. So flying the Xeno, which I love to fly in Colorado, just for the little bit extra passive safety, even though I love the Enzo, I love the CCC gliders. Flying a big GR5 harness for those flights. I've modded that harness with some extra pockets so that I can get to the oxygen easily. I can have space for more snacks and just have kitted it out a little bit more. And I mean, one thing that's really helped, I think, with these big flights in the gear are these big sub harnesses. One, you get a little bit of extra performance, but the amount of protection that you get from the elements is incredible. I mean, now you just have I have my full face helmet sticking out of this neck gasket, and then my arms. You're not like my hands don't get cold anymore. Unless it's a really cold day.
What are you using on your hands?
I have a pair of fleece liners, and then I have a pair of Black Diamond Stance gloves. And they're like a puffy coat for your hands. They're not super thick with leather or anything. They're like ripstop nylon, and I really like them. They just make my hands feel cozy. And then I have a pair of over mitts that I can put on if I need, but I haven't had to. I'm also doing this season, game changer is that I've cannibalized an old down jacket. So I have an extra set of sleeves that I wear on top of my normal down coat. And it's in those, they're sealed off from the arm gaskets on the harness, and it works really well. So you don't have to wear too much on your body, and you can have these over insulated arms.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Do you wear down pants too, or is that too much in the sun?
No,
you just wearing jeans.
I'm just wearing normal pants. They're good in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And then the 2 tanks. I starting to stretch these flights of 8-9 hours in Colorado, I realized that even my larger oxygen tank, I fly with like the AL-248. It's a mountain high tank that's larger than the one that most people fly with, but I'd still run out at about hour 7.5, and have to.
What kind of regulator are you on? Are you using the on-demand pulse, or
I have an on-demand pulse. It just seems to be.
Still running out. Wow.
I know, that's what everyone says. I don't know if I'm just up there just taking too many little breaths or what, but I realized that I need to figure out an option for that. And I can fill my own tank. I really try and overfill it, but I'm still running out. It's not like I'm running out at hour 4. I'm running out at hour 7. But
yeah.
But so I just started flying with a second tank, and I realized that I could have it on in my cockpit and pinch the little red tube. And since I made this extra pocket in my harness, whenever the one tank runs out, I can just unplug the one red tube, plug in the other red tube, and undo the little rubber band that I have pinching the tube closed, and keep on rolling, because I need all the help I can get out there.
Low tech, but that's sweet. That works. That's kind of cool. I saw your post about it, but that's neat. On my big flights, I always run out, and that's a great solution. But I'm not flying with that. I saw that. I've never actually seen that big tank that you use. We'll put up a picture in the show notes for those of you listening, and a link to all these flights, because they're really inspiring. When you did the 292. We've got this Telegram chat channel over here in the States for kind of the XC group, and people immediately were, oh, can you do 300? Can you do 300? And you got that one pretty quickly. So now the question is, obviously over in Europe, they had another big year. Edouard Potel did the 350 something. So they're doing a lot of them over there. What's on the table there? Do you feel like you're just tapping it? Do you feel like this is, obviously for us, weather's always the thing. And one of the reasons I haven't gone and flown in Colorado is it seems even less reliable than here, if that's a thing. But was this just an extraordinary season and you really tapped it out, or was this is just the seeds of a dream? You see a lot more that can be done there.
Yeah, I think the crop is still growing over here. August was good this year, and some of those days they were really good days, but I could imagine better days. And I would definitely like to go further. It's just so cool to me to have that challenge. Like I really like goal-oriented flying, and these previous flights, they came after 4 years of trying, and gosh, like countless days of me like sitting in the winter on like the flight planner app, like drawing it out, and just trying to use my imagination and convince myself that bigger is possible. And I definitely think that bigger is possible. And to justify that, I've just used math. Like I'm not a big math guy, but if I just think about, okay, well, we can launch a half an hour earlier, we can land a half an hour later. You could increase your average speed by 2 kilometers an hour over 10 hours. That's 20 Ks right there. So I think that we could go significantly bigger, which is hard to imagine because these flights aren't really in the North America. They're not really going down that big anywhere else. But I think that there's potential for other starting spots. Definitely in Colorado, there's probably better spots to start than where I'm starting. Flying off of Aspen Mountain, it's a really great early morning climb out spot, but it can get shut down by any little bit of wind, and it's not like this high spot above tree line. It's maybe a little more than 2,000 feet AGL, beautiful east face, but I think you could just start higher and a little bit deeper in the mountains. There's just nothing that seems quite as convenient, definitely for me.
What do you think you could bump your speed up to if you had 10 people?
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. It's like I'm doing it all alone, so having a team would be incredible. It would maybe just help erase some of those stuck moments, right? It would just
you're pressing, you're pushing more bar. When I fly alone, I don't use as much bar. It's impossible. I try. I always think I need to use the same kind of bar we're using when we're racing, but I find that hard to do when I'm by myself.
Yeah, it's much easier when you have your buddy beside you and he starts pushing a little more, so you push a little more, and then vice versa.
Feed off one another.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there were a group of us out there, probably 10% faster, 8% faster. Just 3 kilometers an hour at 10%. That's
a fair bit. There's 30K right there.
Yeah. No, I think the sky's the limit. You just need everything to work out a little bit better, and the day to be a little bit better. But then you look at these record flights in Europe, and it's like when you consider the numbers there, it's like there's 200 incredible pilots that are ready to go every single day and trying, and 50 guys going from the same launch and one guy eking out that extra stuff. I mean, I think if we had that going on here, man, no one ever missing a day. I think, who knows?
Yeah. I think Matt and I have talked about this a lot. Matt Bieser, farmer, we've been talking about it a ton. And, what I saw over there in Europe, I tried the Antholz one a few times, and what they have there is really early launch. You're launching 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're not really turning for the first 60K, which is incredible in the morning. You're not flying fast, but you're just right on the terrain. There's just enough air coming up on these beautiful northeast faces that you're flying all the way into Austria to whatever that glacier is there, the Glassglockner. You're doing the first leg without turning, before it's really on. And I used to think, we just don't have that. We don't have that kind of terrain. We don't have that kind of aspect. You actually do in Colorado, in a sense, of when I look at your track logs. But what we do have is 8-meter climbs.
Yeah.
We spend a lot less time. We go up faster than they can in Europe, and so by that we also glide farther and faster. And I mean, so we've got some pros that they don't have, and I think it's a combination of just putting it together. I think these really big FAIs are there for the taking, but it's just a different approach, or it's a different style, I guess. Yeah,
it definitely seems different. I've never done any big flights in Europe, but I know what they're doing over there, and it seems lovely, just cruising some real long ridge. Here in the central Colorado Rockies, the ridges aren't that long. We do a lot of little crossings in the morning, but kind of a wild thing with the mountains here in the morning is that they're just on. Like you'll be catching, I mean, I've had 8-meter climbs at 10:30 in the morning. So there's that.
Tell me about your mental. Farmer always talks about, after these big flights, 8 hours in the air kind of thing, you land and you're in this kind of alien world. You feel so good and you touch the ground and you're, whoa, I can barely stand up. How tired are you? What does it take to kind of recharge? What does it take to get ready mentally for these big flights? What's the headspace you're trying to find?
It takes a lot. Obviously, just the pure physical endurance and the mental endurance of 9-10 hours. Doing it by yourself, gosh, that's a huge difference. I mean, you need to do a 8-9 hour flight with some friends, like maybe we'll do in Chelan, doing some triangles there, some open distance, and it's so great. It feels so casual, but being by yourself, I mean, you're mentally processing so much more, and you just don't feel any support around you. I do feel the support of people cheering me on and all of that.
Sure.
But they're really exhausting. Through the course of those 3 big flights, I felt myself progressively get in better and better shape, and my comfort level go up and up. On the first big one, gosh, I had all of these like forearm cramps right below my elbow on my forearm, just from like over gripping the bees. And on that flight, my harness wasn't adjusted properly. I actually had an abdominal cramp when I was making a low save. Like my whole stomach felt like someone was clawing into me. It was really incredible. And then it was yeah, by the third one, I actually felt pretty good when I landed. Like, oh, I could have done another hour. I think having your gear, your harness and everything just at the maximum level of dialed in, doing the flights with the really, really big goals, it kind of feels like racing, where you were so driven and you were so pulled by the goal in front of you that it doesn't seem like it takes that long. And it just, like, if you told me to stay in the air for even 2 hours over one mountain, I'd feel all the turbulence. Every little bump in the wind, I'd say, oh, it's too windy, it's too turbulent, I'm getting thrown around here. But whenever you have this huge goal in front of you, it's like turbulence is just an obstacle between you and your goal. Just like racing, you're just on that bar, just crushing through it. And whatever happens, it's just, if you get low on some ridge, of course we want to stay safe and keep our margins. But like that low surfing that ridge, you're just getting slowed down. Like it's just an obstacle. And I'm just so driven to just overcome that, get the speed up. Let's go, go, go. That it helps with the mental space. It's because you're so hungry, just sitting around here in the winter, dreaming about doing some huge flight. And in this case, being able to do some big records, that drive stays with you. It's like, I feel like in my months that I'm not doing this, which are most of the months, it's like a dam that's just filling up with water and filling up with water and filling up with water. And like come July or August, I'm just so ready to go. And like we'll go to Chelan in July, in the end of June, and just get all primed up. And I come back here and I'm ready, man. Like, let's go. And then though, like even on that day, like you've got to be in the right spot. Like I've had days where I don't go flying because I just don't get a good night's sleep. Like I was too excited maybe the night before and slept like shit and just said, oh, it's not for me here.
You've had, so that's a long time flying, 21 years. Mm-hmm. We're pretty similar there. You had any accidents?
I have had like the two injuries I've had in the sport were somewhat self-inflicted. Like I crashed launching on my first year flying in Bozeman when like it was just 15-mile-an-hour dead cross, steep slope, I had 40 flights or 50 flights, whatever. So I had that one. And then 1 year after I got out of college, so like 15 years ago, I was down in Arizona, I was towing and I was doing a ground spiral. And there were some obstacles in the way. I'm not a ground spiral pilot. And I ended up just nicking the ground, but hard enough to break a vertebrae in my back. So I've had that. I didn't have to have surgery, but it was, I almost did. I felt really lucky to get out of that one. And then the one in Montana, I'd broken my tib fib.
Okay.
Outside of that, no, I've thrown my reserve once in live action in Colorado, and that was probably 7 years ago. So
how do you, that's a long stretch and flying in lots and lots of big air. How do you approach your own personal safety risk balance?
Yeah, I want to do flights that feel good. Like I don't want to go out and do something and fly around some crazy overdevelopment or in too much wind where I land and I feel like I really got away with something. It's not worth it to me. It doesn't leave a good taste in my stomach. And so I try and fly in really good conditions. And I think probably an action like not flying the absolute hottest glider I can in these Colorado flights and stepping that back a little bit for the passive safety is something that I do to help mitigate the risks. Carrying all this oxygen is something that I do to help mitigate the risk, just to stay sharp. But inevitably, there are always, I'd say on nearly any big flight that you do, there's some moments that feel a little bit hairy. And you're just you got to be honest with yourself and know when to hold them and know when to fold them. But there's such a fine line there, because if you backed out and flew out every time that you got low, probably none of those flights would have happened. So it's it's great to have, half of my life of being experienced paragliding, to have that to lean on, and to have a good objective lens about what's going on, and not to let that ambition of wanting to do the flight like lead you to do something dumb or too risky. But there's a really fine balance there. Was it an Apocalypse Now quote? The crazy AWOL general says, "A snail walks along the edge of a razor. That's my dream. That's my nightmare." I might be butchering that, but yeah, there's a fine balance. Surely some of those flights, the biggest risk would have been like pushing it over some trees, like in some foresty areas where you're looking at your glide out and it's looking a little bit not great if you don't get it. But I like to look at that with a conservative lens. Like, so I'm not looking at my glide out thinking like, oh, in best case scenario, I'll be able to glide out. I'm trying to be good and honest. And
what's the worst case here?
Yeah, these last two really big triangles are over a new line, and a nice thing about that line is that it's not big jagged mountains the entire way. You have like 40, 50 Ks of big mountains in the beginning, and then it's a lot of forest. They're mountains, but it's like this high plateau area. There's more landing zones, and it's a little bit warm and fuzzy feeling than just being over the jaggedness all day. Yeah.
You said that there are times where you just wake up, it's a good day, but you don't really feel like you have it. Do you have a way to check in with that? I mean, are there certain kind of red flags that you try to pay attention to, or is this just a gut feeling? I'm not feeling it today.
Yeah. I would say that, kind of measuring my sleep is a good one. And just trying to get a good night's sleep, or at least like try to get a good night's sleep 2 days before, and like have the cumulative number on that. I don't know. I think I never turned down any good condition this year for flying, so I was always feeling pretty good. So it's not something I do that often, but like, I don't really drink, which I used to like have a couple beers like pretty much every evening, and like that really messed with my sleep quality. And like I used to like maybe wake up and be like, man, I think I had one too many beers last night. I'm just not going to go do it, because it's just so demanding here. It's not like you're out flying over the flats. Like you just have to feel tip top.
You gotta be tapped in.
Yeah,
you're going for a big day.
Yeah.
Do you do any training outside of flying for flying? But what I mean by that is, are you doing any reading, studying, going out for little short flights, doing little training flights for, to try to push upwind? Are you doing stuff, outside, you were saying 4 comps a year. That's certainly training. We always have to view those as training, because sometimes we do good and sometimes we suck.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk about that side of things. Is it obviously you put a lot of time and effort into these lines, thinking about them in the winter and planning them out and looking really closely at certain aspects. And is this going to work? I know you put a lot of time into, 4 years into these big FAIs, but talk about that side of things.
Sure. I mean, since I was young, I've been a rock climber. I don't do it as like the biggest thing that I do now, or the most main thing, but yeah, to short answer your question, I feel like I do a decent bit of cross training. Yeah. Rock climbing. I used to practice highlining a decent bit, and like that was a really great one just for like your mental space. 'Cause it's definitely one of those spaces where you can be, where you got to slow your mind down, even though it's telling you you're nuts. A bit of mountain biking, bit of strength training. So some of that, I know that I can't go out and fly an 8-hour flight or a 9-hour, 10-hour flight off the couch. Though I can fly pretty well off the couch, like a lot of 20-year pilots can. So I definitely try and, leading up to these flights to try and get out and warm up. It's great that the Chelan comp is always kind of right before our season kicks in. So I usually come back from there. I usually go there feeling really unprepared, and then come back from it feeling really good. Also, like before going to Chelan this year, I did like a 190 kilometer triangle, and there was a lot of headwind on the second leg of that. And if I didn't feel like I needed to train, I would have just gone down and landed. But I pushed for like 8 hours and made it back in that one. And I remember going to Chelan, and people said, "Wow, that was a really good flight." And I looked at it and said, "No, I was just training. Like, I didn't even think of it as like a really good flight. Like, I mean, it was good, but." So yeah, being ready. You can't be doing that fully off the couch for sure.
If my math is sort of right, and I'm like you, I'm not great at math either, but half of your life has been dedicated pretty closely to the sky crack, as Cedar likes to call it. If you could rewind the clock, you've heard this one before, but if you could rewind the clock to that Pete, 5 years before you moved to Colorado when you're just getting started, maybe your 50-hour self, you're 50 hours in that first year or second year, what would you tell that Pete? It doesn't have to be about paragliding, it can just be life, but either way, whatever you want.
Yeah, at 50 hours, it would have been to slow down a little bit, and to like make sure to get out and go flying with other people that are better than you, or other people that are the same skill set as you. Because I definitely would get out there a lot by myself. I've always been pretty independent in that respect, and to surround yourself with great pilots, which I was fortunate enough in my career to have some really good mentors. But I'd say at that point it would be that, and then after that I would say to only fly because you want to when you want to. Like, I used to feel like every summer that I'd spend in Colorado, like, I've got to do a 100-mile flight. Otherwise people are going to forget who I am, and I'm going to lose my namesake, or someone's going to take this record. I kind of like that pressure a little bit, but it definitely led me to push it on some days. Like, I know we were speaking earlier about flying in these light wind days and the triangles, and how nice that is. Like 12 years ago, probably, I upped the Colorado open distance record and went like 245 kilometers, which to me was huge back then. I did it in 4 hours and 45 minutes. It was 51 kilometer an hour average speed over mountains the absolute entire way. And whenever I told people the next day, they had been hiking in the mountains that next day, they said, "Well, you were flying?" And they said, "Dude, it was fucking windy in the mountains." And I knew it, and I still went out there. And I think you can relate. I think that you've, been there where you're like, God, I am so driven for this. And the solution is more wind, and then, calibrated and
I mean, my big one here, that was a long time ago now. I mean, geez, 2013, but I think my average speed, I have to go back and check again, but it was either 54 or 55K an hour, for 7.5 hours. It was almost 400K. But I mean, the whole time was just, if I was at 18,000, it was fine. But when I was in the terrain, which thankfully was only twice really, it was ridiculous. There's no way I would even think about doing that now. So it's just, we sometimes we get lucky for sure. But that's speed that they're doing in Texas when there's no hazards. It's just flat. There's no mountains. There's no lee. So that was, we learn, we get a little bit smarter.
Yeah.
Pete, awesome, man. Congratulations. It was just so cool to watch that from afar. Of course, we were all incredibly envious too. But congratulations on putting it together after so many years of dreaming about it and planning and scheming. And just to see it go down over and over and over was, oh man, I was channeling your stoke for sure, as everybody was around the world. But congratulations, and can't wait to see what more you do. And I'm hoping I get to come join you next time. I'm going to put Colorado on the map. Like I said, it's ridiculous that I live so close and I haven't even been out there.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, that was really a dream come true for me. You know, I wanted to show what I can do, but also express that, but also express, you know, what is available here in the state. And, you know, after seeing all these big flights go down in Europe, you know, time and again, I'm just like, I want to show what we can do here, man. And I know that it's possible. I mean, anyone at a comp after party in the last 3 years has heard me say to them, you got to come. We can do 300, man. Let's go.
Yeah. And it was really inspiring. I mean, we've definitely got it on the table here too.
Yeah. I know you do.
It's just a matter of, we got to get out. We got to do it. We got to make it happen.
Yeah,
so, we've certainly got the terrain up here for big stuff like that too. So I think you shot us all in the arm with a whole bunch of inspiration. It was great.
I love it. I mean, yeah, it's not just here. It's not just where I've been starting in Colorado. There's other sites and down in the San Juans and in Idaho and in Nevada. I think that the more that we open our minds to the possibility that it is possible, like then all of a sudden we do it. Like, I never thought that 270 was possible until Galen did it. Like, I convinced myself maybe I could beat Farmer's old record by like 3K. I was like, maybe I could go 240. And then Galen did that flight. And then within 24 hours, I convinced myself last year, I was like, I can go 275. I know, you know,
yeah.
And it's just
that's sometimes all it takes.
Yeah. It's so cool though. It's so cool to play that game with ourselves and to inspire each other. I really love it.
Totally. Thanks, dude. It was great seeing you, great talking to you, and thanks for the stoke, man.
You got it. Thanks.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So, for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.